Anyway, we're going to study Sri Nisargadatta's "I Am That." Uh, this book it's an Advaita book, so it's not super devotional, although you can see hints of devotion in it, and certainly I'm going to work very hard at highlighting uh, the devotion in it because I'm really very interested in presenting this idea of Jnana Bhakti that Ramakrishna talks about, Sri Dharananda mentions, and to kind of just help in this modern world. Because in this modern world, devotion is great, but our modern mind has a little bit of resistance to it. I say our modern mind. I don't know if we obviously don't all have the same mind. So let me just say my mind. My mind pushes against pure devotion a little bit as being, naive or not thought out. And I'm just a little uncomfortable because of my past, just believing something for the sake of believing it. And, sometimes creating this idea of an invisible friend in the sky kind of thing. My own disposition, I want something tying it down, something to make it a well thought out, carefully considered reality, And so Jnana Bhakti is a way of doing that. It's enjoying the bhakti. And for me, what I mean right now, when we say, when Thakur says Jnana Bhakti, Thakur doesn't elaborate much on it. So he hasn't told me too much. But some of the other things, it's just really understanding that when the Gyanis are talking about awareness, and we point to this sometimes when we talk together, that awareness is God. It's your beloved. It's the divine, and the nature of that pure awareness is Satchitananda. It's that divine light, and of course it goes beyond those descriptors. Awareness doesn't actually have any of those things, but it's the container of everything. And so in Jnana, we still dance with God. And in the end, it's God alone that remains, just like in Bhakti. In Bhakti, we merge into the divine. And in Jnana, we don't merge so much as realize that we were always that we are God incarnate with our mind and our body. And this is what God does with our mind and our body. But our ego lights up in there and says, oh, no, it's me. This is what I'm doing. And that ownership of what we're doing is what is the seed of karma. That's the root of karma. And so as we go through all of these practices, we're just trying to undo the bonds of our karma, the bonds of time, space, causation, the bonds of past, present, and future. And to know what that means, it really all just means the cessation of thought. It's not to sit and be stupid. It's simply sitting to be quiet and aware. And in that full awareness, in that silence, all knowledge is available. A very different way of being that doesn't involve the machinations of mind, planning through time, space, causation, planning or living according to past, present, and future. But it's a matter of simply being in the eternal moment and disconnecting your association or your identity with the things that fall within the limitations of the mind. Those limitations being exactly that: time, space, causation, relative thinking, sense objects, senses themselves, and past, present, future. So those are limitations of mind, and you have the option of stepping outside of mind anytime. To the edge of mind, we'll say, because pure mind is Brahman. So there's no way to get out of pure mind. Pure mind is the whole, the beyond, the whole plus. But activated mind is Shakti. That's the world. That's what creates, preserves, and destroys. It's where Mother creates your universe, the personal universe that you live in is within your own mind, but you're an observer. That's the whole point of the witness ideas, is you're the observer of that universe. Mother, so the way I like to see Jnana Bhakti is that you've got your pure awareness, which is Brahman, pure mind, And then you've got awareness of awareness, which seems to be us. The devotee is awareness of awareness. But the awareness itself is the beloved, is the divine. So in Jnana, we're not going to go for the dry Jnana that just leaves you trying to answer who you are and forgetting everything else. We're going to do all those same practices, but understanding, using the same names that Bhaktis use to talk about the elements that the Jnana uses, and to kind of fuse a combination that will allow us to enjoy the depth and the good logic and secure thinking of Jnana Yoga, and at the same time, the wonderful bliss of the reality, the wonderful ideal of love incarnate, and to let our silence of Jnana help us become aware of the presence that we're going to call, that's what we're going to call the now, the I am. So to become aware of that is becoming aware of the constant presence of the beloved, of the divine. And so we'll try and keep those both things in our mind as we study this book. This book is pure Jnana. And I read it the first time, I think in my fourth, fifth, or sixth year, somewhere in there, year in the monastery. And the best way to do this book, and I would encourage you to do it, because certainly we're not going to learn it by reading it once, but the way to read this book is not to sit and read like you're reading a novel or even a textbook, but like you're talking to the teacher. It's best to just sit and read like 1 or 2 or 3 Q&A couplets. Just read one and then just sit with it for 10 minutes. Read it several times to yourself, look at it and sort of try and make up questions about it to lead you into understanding what it means. What we have to be careful with is that we've grown, many of us have been around Vedanta for a number of years now. And so we'll read a phrase and it won't prompt any new thinking on our part. We'll just rummage through mind and say, oh yeah, I've read that before. Oh yeah, I know what that means. And we just kind of leave it with it. But in fact, if we knew what it meant, we wouldn't be here. We would be finished. So even though we think we know what these things mean, even though we have good definitions for all the words and all the concepts, and we have nice boxes already established in our mind to put all of these things in, resist doing that. Try and hear these things for the first time, because they're startling, they're shocking. They are counterintuitive to the worldly mind. They don't make sense. And so we really want to learn to just sit and let these things unfold. Even if you just put the idea in your mind and then step back and just watch the chemical reaction as your other thoughts begin to interact with this new truth or this new idea. And let thoughts move around and let ideas and perspectives move around, trying to experientially understand this concept, and not academically or not mentally, not philosophically. We don't want a philosophical understanding. We want a living knowing of these things. So none of the things being presented are the thing themselves. So it's not important that we outline all of these things and get a good working knowledge so we can become, Jnanic biologists of the spirit, but more so that we can just become observers of them as truth. We can see their truth. We can see the separations they're talking about. We can know the essences that they're pointing at. But to always keep that in mind. We're not learning to gather or to build a new philosophy or to improve the one in our head. We're actually trying to hear so that we can dismantle what's in the head, do away with wrong thinking. All the stuff we're going to learn in this book is self-apparent, self-evident to the quiet mind. If you can quiet your mind and you can know your separation from body and mind, these thoughts of Sri Nisargadatta and of the Jnana Yoga are obvious. They become apparent. They come to the forefront of our reality, and we understand them much more deeply. So that being our introduction, let's jump in and we're just going to read through who is Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj.
Swami,
Yes.
In Jnana Bhakti, can you just elaborate on that and explain what that is for a second?
Jnana Bhakti?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a work in progress for me. Ramakrishna mentions it a single time in the gospel and doesn't say anything about it. Sri Nisargadatta says that it's what Ramakrishna was talking about when he said that bhakti is the most effective path in this age. He says that he was talking about this idea of Jnana Bhakti, and Jnana Bhakti is approaching the teachings. It's looking at the fact that Jnana Bhakti, Karma Bhakti, or Jnana Bhakti, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga. They're not talking about four different things. They're talking about the same thing, and they're just using different perspectives or different approaches to it based on dispositions. But they're all saying the same thing. So it's one can exist within the other. And a student of one can be comfortable within the other. All he has to do is bring his own vocabulary with him or her into that. And so Jnana Bhakti is the practice of looking for who you are with the divine present with you, the divine helping you work your way through the Jnanic exercises. In reality, the Jnanis, the approach is very individual, where you're just sitting there alone doing your practice until you realize thou art that. But with being bhaktis, we have a little bit of an advantage that we can have that with us now without knowing the oneness to accompany us on the journey. And through the journey of jnana, we come to realize that our experience of the present is in fact our experience of our beloved. And that our relationship to the present, am I happy at this moment? Am I content at this moment? Am I anxiety free at this moment? Am I happy? Am I blissful? If not, that's indicative of not your relationship with the moment, but it's indicative of your relationship with the beloved. This moment and the beloved are the same. And so if in this moment you are not finding your contentment, then there's something missing. There's some deep delusion that you're entertaining that's not allowing you to experience the moment as beloved, as the divine. And so Jnana Bhakti is approaching Jnana with God, with the chosen ideal, bringing in those elements of Bhakti with us as we look at the metaphysics of or at least descriptions of the real metaphysics of what is actually going on and what we actually are and how it actually works. But in that, always know that in the end, it's God and God alone that exists. And that's the same in Bhakti also. We come to realize in Bhakti, we merge with the beloved. That's how we talk about it. We consummate our marriage with the divine. And we surrender ourselves into unison, into into oblivion in a sense. We surrender our ego and become one with that. Well, we just become one. And in Jnana, it's of course the same thing, but we dismantle the ego by observing and seeing that the ego is impossible, that the fundamental beliefs that are necessary to maintain an egoistic sense of self is illogical and not supportable and doesn't exist. And so we dismantle manually the ego that in Jnana gets diminished by our love and trust in the divine. You see, so it's the same process of dismantling ego. And so Jnana Bhakti is to look at the Jnanic principles for dismantling ego in the company of the beloved, in the company of the divine, and enjoying the process in love, rather than just sitting here as doing a neti practice or doing it on our own because there is no one else kind of thing. That would be my my closest and maybe worst description of this idea of Jnana Bhakti at this point. Like I say, it's a work in progress for me. But the little bits that I've shared have been amazingly rewarding. And I think putting them in combination with this book might be quite delightful. So is that a good enough summary?
I was wondering if I can confirm by trying to see what I understood of it in different terms.
Yeah.
Is it, can we say that we know that our ego and everything is not the essential part of us, and that there is one truth that is common, and which is the whole universe, but there are some individuals who are very advanced, and we share that with them, but we have not manifested it, and we can attain that. Is that like a mix of Jnana and Bhakti, the fact that you have the faith in those individuals and you are pushing to reach that?
Okay. Yes, in general, but not really a faith in those individuals. It's more of a faith in the presence of the divine in our ideals, in our chosen ideals, and a union of that. So we take the presence of the divine. We do our own kind of mystical magic, actually, because what we do is normally in Bhakti, we've got the chosen ideal of Jesus or Buddha or Ramakrishna or Mother in our mind, and we're sitting, and meditating on that, and connecting with this divinity through that effort, which is purifying the mind and removing ego. In Jnana, you sit and do neti neti. You sit there and try and pay a deep attention until you can see your separation from mind and see your separation from the body, and then see your separation from all conceived things, all things, and let the world recede into mere thought, and then you have that experience. You come to know the truth of the fact that the universe is within you, that you are not within the universe. So that's Jnana, and then we have the Bhakti, and the Jnana Bhakti is bringing those two together so that our study that brings us to the moment, to the now, and removes the past, present, and future by separating ourselves from mind and body, is done. That actually what we're doing is the same as surrendering to the beloved. We're the now that we're trying to become aware of in Jnana Yoga is the beloved. It is Jesus. It is Ramakrishna. It is Buddha. This moment is the incarnation as it's experienced by us, as it were. And so our relationship to this moment, our existence in this moment, and how we feel and think about it is really our existence in the relationship with our divine companion, and is indicative of how that's going. If we're in the constant presence of God and we're never thinking of him, we're not very good lovers. We're ignoring our favorite person, but to be in the moment and to be aware of the now, not the mind's description of the now, not your attachment's projection of the now, but the now without anything telling you what it is what we're going for. To experience this moment without anything telling us what it is, not our mind, not our past, not our accumulated ideas. We're trying to push all of that murky stuff aside and to see the moment as it is. And if we do that, we find out that the moment is God, is our beloved, is our highest ideal. And we find out a lot more also that ultimately we have to shed. We find out that really our existence is assumed based on an ego, which is just a tangle, right? If we untangle the ego, Thakur says it's like peeling the onion. There's nothing there. And so Jnana Yoga helps us peel the onion. We come to the realization, oh, wow, none of this was necessary. And in Jnana Bhakti, that grace, that love, that manifestation of God as now is what gives us the courage and gives us the confidence to let go and drop into the dark, as it were, to fall into emptiness, which is to fall into formless, fall into our true identity. And so what the Jnani has to do by himself, the Jnana Bhakti does with the company of the beloved. Just not now, thank you. So sorry about that. It was house cleaning.
Thank you.
So all right. So more of this will come up as we go along in here. Let's jump in and take a look at who is Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj. And of course, he talks like a Jnani because he is that. And it's interesting to know that he's not posturing when he says certain things, that it's actually what he's experiencing, what he knows to be true. So it says, when asked about the date of his birth, Sri Nisargadatta replied blandly, what birth? I've never been born. Writing a biographical note on Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj is as frustrating and unrewarding task, for not only the exact date of his birth is unknown, but no verified facts concerning the early years of his life are available. So he became a true sannyasin. He was, we're going to see all that in a minute. However, some of his elderly relatives and friends say that he was born in the month of March in 1897 on a full moon day, which coincided with the festival of Hanuman Jayanti, when Hindus pay their homage to Hanuman, also named Maruti, the monkey god of Ramayana fame. And to associate his birth with this auspicious date, his parents named him Maruti. Available information about his boyhood and early youth is patchy and disconnected. We learn that his father, Shivra Rampant, was a poor man who worked for some time as a domestic servant in Bombay and later eked out his livelihood as a petty farmer in Kandalgaon, a small village in the backwoods of Ratnagiri district of Maharashtra. Maruti grew up almost without education. As a boy, he assisted his father in such labors as lay within his power. He tended cattle, drove oxen, worked in the fields, and ran errands. His pleasures were simple, as his labors, but he was gifted with an inquisitive mind, bubbling over with questions of all sorts. So we see a little bit of Thakur here, very simple village life upbringing, not very wealthy, but seeming to manage just fine in that poverty, and doing what he can, helping out as he can. So when Maruti attained the age of 18, his father died, leaving behind his widow, 4 sons and 2 daughters. The meager income from the small farm dwindled further after the old man's death and was not sufficient to feed so many mouths. So Maruti's elder brother left the village for Bombay in search of work, and he, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, followed shortly after. It is said that in Bombay he worked for a few months as a low-paid junior clerk in an office, but resigned the job in disgust. He then took petty trading as a haberdasher and started a shop for selling children's clothes, tobacco, and handmade country cigarettes, bidis. This business is said to have flourished in course of time, giving him some sort of financial security. During this period, he got married and had a son and 3 daughters. All right, so here we're going to get some very encouraging news. Someone who's married and has children and is running a business is going to realize God through the path of Jnana right before our very eyes. Childhood, youth, marriage, progeny. Maruti lived the usual humdrum and eventless life of a common man till his middle age, with no inkling at all of the sainthood that was to follow. Among his friends during this period was one Yashwantrao Bhagkar, who was a devotee of Sri Siddharameshwar Maharaj. Siddharameshwar Maharaj, a spiritual teacher of the Navnat Sampradaya, a sect of Hinduism. One evening, Bhagkar took Maruti to his guru, and that evening proved to be the turning point in his life. The guru gave him a mantra and instructions on meditation. Early in his practice, he started having visions and occasionally even fell into trances. Something exploded within him, as it were, giving a birth to a cosmic consciousness, a sense of eternal life. The identity of Maruti, the petty shopkeeper, dissolved, and the illuminating personality of Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj emerged. Most people live in the world of self-consciousness and do not have the desire or power to leave it. They exist only for themselves. All their effort is directed toward achievement of self-satisfaction and self-glorification. There are, however, seers, teachers, and revealers who, while apparently living in the same world, live simultaneously in another world also, the world of cosmic consciousness, effulgent with infinite knowledge. After his illuminating experience, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj started living such a dual life. He conducted his shop, but ceased to be profit-minded. Later, abandoning his family and business, he became a mendicant, a pilgrim over the vastness and variety of the Indian religious scene. He walked barefooted on his way to the Himalayas, where he planned to pass the rest of his days in a quest of eternal life. But he soon retraced his steps and came back home, comprehending the futility of such a quest. Eternal life, he perceived, was not to be sought for. He already had it. Having gone beyond the I am the body idea, he had acquired a mental state so joyful, so peaceful, and so glorious that everything appeared to be worthless compared to it. That is the very definition of true renunciation, right there. When you know that you have that thing which pales, makes everything else pale in comparison. That's mature renunciation. Beautiful, beautiful. Everything appeared to be worthless compared to it. He had attained self-realization. Uneducated though the master is, his conversation is enlightened to an extraordinary degree. Though born and brought up in poverty, he is the richest of the rich, for he has the limitless wealth of perennial knowledge, compared to which the most fabulous treasures are mere tinsel. He is warm-hearted, he's tender, shrewdly humorous, absolutely fearless, and absolutely true, inspiring, guiding, and supporting everyone who comes to him. Any attempt to write a biographical note on such a man is frivolous and futile, for he is not a man with a past or a future. He is the living present, eternal and immutable. He is the self that has become all things. That's beautiful, wonderful. I'd like to have someone write that about every single one of you and me. So our chapter 1 we're going to start with is called The Sense of I Am. And our questioner comes in. Questioner, it is a matter of daily experience that on waking up, the world suddenly appears. Where does it come from? That's an interesting perspective, actually very different from a perspective that I've had, because my mind so easily assumes that the world has only been there, that I stepped out and came back in, not that I was there and the world disappeared and then comes back again. So kind of an interesting change in perspective, because it's a true one, actually. You are the unchanging immortal, so you didn't go anywhere. The world literally disappeared for a while and came back again. So he says, where does it come from? Maharaj, before anything can come into being, there must be somebody to whom it comes. All appearance and disappearance presupposes a change against some changeless background. So see that change that we talk about all the time. He says it very clearly here, that we want to live in this world not noticing the change. You see, that's how we normally live. That's what distracts us. It's that walking down Market Street that Vivekananda talks about. We want to learn to walk down Market Street and to remain in the cave in the Himalayas. He says that's the ideal for us as sadhus in the modern world. We want to be able to walk down the busy center of the city street and to be inhabiting our own Himalayan cave, that within. And the way that we do that is by not paying attention to all the changing thing as if that's the point, but to pay attention to what all of the changing things are indicating. And that's what he's saying here. What are these changing things indicating? They presuppose a change against some changeless background. You have to be outside of change in order to be able to witness all of the change, everything changing all around you, everything changing all the time. You are the stability of all of that. You are that self-existent self. Without you, the continuity ends. There's nothing there. So he says, before anything can come into being, there must be somebody to whom it comes. All appearance and disappearance presupposes a change against some changeless background. The questioner, well, before waking up, I was unconscious. Maharaj, in what sense? Having forgotten or not having experienced? Don't you experience even when unconscious? Can you exist without knowing? A lapse in memory, is it a proof of non-existence? And can you validly talk about your own non-existence as an actual experience? You cannot even say that your mind does not exist. Did you not wake up on being called? And on waking up, was it not the sense I am that came first? Some seed consciousness must be existing even during sleep or swoon. On waking up, the experience runs, I am, the body, in the world. It may appear to arise in succession, but in fact, it is all simultaneous, a single idea of having a body in a world. Can there be a sense of I am without being somebody or other? Anybody want to ask a question about that? Do you see what he's saying there? He's saying that there is an awareness, there is a continuity, even in your dreamless sleep. Swami Prabhupada used to say, it's the reason you know whether you had a good night's sleep or not, because you were there experiencing that nothingness, but there was still someone experiencing something. And when you wake up, you just reboot into the world, into your ignorance. The first thing comes, I am. When you wake up, you instantly exist. I am. I'm here. And then immediately the body associates it. You associate yourself with the body. This is the body. This is me. And where am I? Oh, look. Then you wake up and become conscious of all the things related to the body, the world, all around you. But that self that you are was your only identity for a while you were sleeping. There was no identity with attribute. There was no identity with particular. There was no identity with time. There was that absolute. And so there was no particularity there, which gives us the idea of unconsciousness, but we can't really be unconscious. We just become conscious of the general instead of conscious of the particular, or conscious of consciousness itself, which is realization, to be aware of the one without a second. That's going to happen quite a bit. There's quite a few funny things in here because because really you can't talk about these things. They can't, this thing that we're pointing at can only be pointed at. And so when I say to be conscious of the one without a second, that's an absurd thing to say. But from our position of absurdity, there's not many other ways to talk about it. So this one without a second, you can't be aware of the one without a second, because who's aware of what if there's one without a second, right? So it's not you in that's why that state can't, no, it's not a state either. That's why that can't be described, because it's not of the mind. So there's no past, present, future. So there's no story to it. There's no cause and effect in it. So it can't be described as an outcome or a composite of kinds. It's a unity, so it doesn't have parts, and it's got an infinite number of attributes or no attributes. Either one is fine to say, because there's no one to view the attributes when there's one without a second. So you see that isness is why the process is so confusing to us, because we're accustomed to living in the mind. And by living through the mind, we use past, present, and future to find our meaning. We use cause and effect to describe the world, and also to project our hopes and dreams and desires of the future into it. The time-space causation is the infrastructure within which we work and use our identity to build our imagined lives. But none of those things are real. And each one of them is individual to us as a person, because we carry them within our own mind, those ideas. And so we're trying to find what he's talking about here, this self, which is indicated by the changing world around it, this self that is indicated in pure being, the fact that you exist, and not letting that existence be defined by a thought, because that drags us into all of the things that we're not. If we're describing ourselves with thought, then we're describing ourselves with time, space, causation, with past, present, future, right? And that's not how we're going to get there. So this becoming aware of this observer who's able to see everything changing, and letting all of that change make us aware of the stillness of the I that is behind it, that which is tying it all together, that which is leading us toward a unity in the diversity. So the questioner says, I'm always somebody with its memories and habits. I know no other I am. Maharaj, maybe something prevents you from knowing. When you do not know something which others know, what do you do? Well, I seek the source of their knowledge under their instruction. Maharaj, is it not important to you to know whether you are a mere body or something else? Or maybe nothing at all? Don't you see that all of your problems are your body's problems? Food, clothing, shelter, family, friends, name, fame, security, survival. All these lose their meaning the very moment you realize that you may not be a mere body. Questioner, what benefit is there in knowing that I'm not a body? Even to say that you are not the body is not quite true. In a way, you are all the bodies, all of the hearts, all of the minds, and much more. Go deep into the sense of I am, and you will find. How do you find a thing you have mislaid or forgotten? You keep it in your mind until you recall it. The sense of being, of I am, is the first to emerge. Ask yourself, where does it come from? Or just watch it quietly. When the mind stays in the I am, without moving, you enter a state which cannot be verbalized, but can be experienced. All you need to do is try and try again. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to have the mind stay in the I am without moving. What does he mean without moving? Without vrittis, without waves. What are those waves? Your thoughts. So simply try and open all of your awareness, open all the doors and windows. Let all sensations come in as they come in, unfiltered. Don't pay attention to them. Let them all point at the stillness that lets you be aware of them. You know, there's a wonderful idea that in the same idea that stillness allows us to become aware of all the change, it's also the silence that makes room for sound. You know, the silence comes first, and in the silence, sound can happen. And so we're trying to come to that place where we stop the mind and are just simply being ourselves, which is pure awareness. Awareness of everything without any particular in it, not grabbing anything, letting everything arise from nothingness, appear for its moment, and fall back into nothingness. And he says that when you do that, when the mind stays in the I am without moving, you enter a state which you cannot be verbalized but can be experienced. All you need to do is try and try again. So just practice. That's why we call it practice. After the sense I am is always with you, only you have attached all kinds of things to it. Body, feelings, thoughts, ideas, possessions, etc. All these self-identifications are misleading. These are all the things that tell you what you are, tell you what the moment is. We're trying to eliminate everything that's telling us anything. Trying to eliminate everything that's telling us anything so that that which is obvious can become apparent, right? If you need to know who you are, you shouldn't need something to tell you, even if it's something as intimate to you as the mind. The mind is not you. You don't need the mind to tell you who you are. You don't need the body to tell you who you are, right? You need the moment, your isness, to inform you. Why do you need to be told who you are? It doesn't make any sense when you think about it in that perspective. So shut everything up and just know who you are. Who you are is not going to fall into a sentence. Why? Because a sentence belongs to the mind. And a sentence can only be spoken as long as it has subject, object, verb, which is the relative world. It can only exist if it has a past, present, and future, which is mind, and a cause and effect, which is also mind. So you see, you're not going to be able to think about what you are. You're going to be, because you are infinite, ever free, unbounded, immortal, and pure. You cannot be caught in a sentence. You cannot be described in words that require a noisy mind to make sense. So the questioner asks the big question, then what am I, Maharaj? It is enough to know what you are not. Right? Because we just said the question, what am I, can't be answered with a sentence. So what do? Do we just shut up and sit here and be unhappy in our delusion? He says, no, the way to attack this, since we can't tell you in a sentence what you are for the mere reasons we just discussed, let's try and get you to know what you are by saying what you're not. Those things can fall within the mind. All of the things that you are not can be talked about. It is enough to know what you are not. You need not know what you are. For as long as knowledge means description in terms of what is already known, perceptual or conceptual, there can be no such thing as self-knowledge. For what you are cannot be described except as total negation. All you can say is, well, I'm not this and I'm not that. You cannot meaningfully say, this is what I am. It just makes no sense. What you can point out as this or that cannot be yourself. Do you understand that? It's the biggest hint that we have to our real nature. If you're watching your thoughts, you are obviously not your thoughts. If you are aware of your body, you are obviously not your body, right? Because it's something that's in front of your observer. It's something that's in front of your witness. If I'm looking at something, I am clearly not that something. It's obvious. So where did we get this idea that we were the body-mind? When the first question shows us that it's quite impossible for us to be the mind or the body. So he says, you cannot meaningfully say, this is what I am. It just makes no sense. What you can point out as this or that cannot be yourself. Surely you cannot be something else. You are nothing perceivable or imaginable. Yet without you, there can be neither perception nor imagination. You observe the heart feeling, the mind thinking, the body acting. The very act of perceiving shows that you are not what you perceive, right? That's the point. Anything you can observe cannot be you because it's in front of your observance, right? Can there be perception, experience without you? An experience must belong. Somebody must come and declare it as his own. Without an experiencer, the experience is not real. It is the experiencer that imparts reality to experience. An experience which you cannot have, of what value is that to you? So you are the enabler of experience. You're the enabler of all your thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. You are separate and apart. You can't be described because you are not a particular. You're a universal.
So Maharaj, I have a question.
Yes.
So, one talks about being the seer or the experiencer, yet we know that the real you is just the light, is not the experience. It's because you're not really experiencing. It is the calmness. It is. So where does this experiencer actually lie then?
In the mind. It's the ego self. The ego is this imagined composition of the soul with the material, right? So when your true self is the container of all attributes or no attributes, either one, you can say it both ways. When that universal comes in contact with a microphone, with a body-mind, it can absorb that particular, right? That particular is familiar to it because it's part of it. It's not it, but it's a part of it. It's in there. And so it identifies, it adheres, attaches to a particular. And these particulars are all of the things that you've collected in mind. You know, that they're the things that are contained in the waves of mind. All of these particulars. And so that identity with particular it gives birth to the ego, a new sense of me that's not the universal self and is identified by what's coming in through the senses. It doesn't pay attention to what's back here anymore because now it's identified with a particular. In that identity as a particular, it gets all of its information about itself through the senses. And it begins then to maintain that identity, right? That identity
which is still Brahman, right? Because the ego is not, there is nothing, ego is not really anything, right? I mean, in the end, it is what is experienced would be Brahman.
Yes.
Because there is, I mean, ego is an imaginary reflective mind.
Absolutely.
In a way.
Absolutely. So think about it again. Let's go to the dream idea, because that's always so helpful. Go into the dream and think, okay, I was in a dream last night, and but here's the cool thing: the whole dream is the mind stuff, right? Everything in that dream is mind stuff, or Brahman, because pure mind is Brahman. So we'll call, instead of calling it Brahman, we'll call it mind stuff, just to give it a concrete existence for us. So this mind stuff is what creates everything in that dream. And then we are an element in that dream, right? But we're actually the element that we identify in the dream is not the dreamer, right?
Right.
It's an identified particular that's living within the dream. Everything that particular, because that particular is in the dream, everything that it experiences in that dream is Brahman, is mind stuff. But its true identity is the sleeper.
Mm-hmm.
The sleeper contains the dream. So all possibilities exist within the sleeper, but not within the dreamed, not within the I that is particular.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That I is surrounded by the dream, whereas the true I is the container of the dream. And so that is exactly what our situation is. We are the divine. Thou art that, right? You are the dreamer. The whole dream, this whole universe, everything and everyone in your life is within you. But that you is not the particular you that's in the dream, the particularized you. The you that contains everything is the one that the dreamer is normally unaware of. Your identity in the dream does not remember your daytime memories, does not remember your daytime history, does not even remember your daytime body. You've become completely deluded in that sleep into a new incarnation. You've taken on a new body. You've taken on a new identity, and you live in a new universe, and you accept it perfectly. It doesn't matter how weird that dream gets. You, as the dreamed, it's totally fine with you. It doesn't have to make sense at all. But within the context of the dream, it all seems perfectly fine. It all seems perfectly logical. It's no problem. I was there and now I'm here and I didn't move.
So the experiencer then is both the person, the particular in the dream, as well as the dreamer.
Oh, yes. But no, also. Because the experiencer as the dreamer is going to be everything in the dream. Technically, the experience of everything in that dream is
I accept that, but it's still the experiencer is the dreamer.
Yes.
Ultimately.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
That is true. Yes. However, if what he just said here, it requires an identity to be the experiencer.
And that's why, and that's why I think where he earlier says that the God, that he is pervasive in all. I think in the beginning he says that sentence.
Yes.
I think that's where the Jnana and the Bhakti come together, where the Brahman is, when we say is present in all, yet is not any one of them. So therefore, then the experiencer is ultimately the one absolute, but localized.
Yes, that is true. But if it's the one absolute and it's localized, it's not the one absolute anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't know itself that way. So yeah, so the whole dream is the experiencer of the absolute. But since the absolute is not going to choose a particular, there is no experience. Because the experience needs an experiencer. It needs someone to own it. And if there is no me or mine for that, then there is no experience. There's only the wholeness, the isness of the dream contained within the self. And the mind stuff is seen as mind stuff. The dream is seen as a dream, and there's no particular, it's not even separate from you at that point.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So he says, so the sense of being an experiencer, the questioner is saying, the sense of being an experiencer, the sense of I am, is it not also an experience? Maharaj, well, obviously. Yes, of course. Everything experienced is an experience. And in every experience, there arises the experiencer of it. So you have an experience that has a reality before the experiencer of it. Memory creates the illusion of continuity. Right? So your past is what creates your sense of your continuity. In reality, each experience has its own experiencer, and the sense of identity is due to the common factor at the root of all experiencer-experience relations. Identity and continuity are not the same. Just as each flower has its own color, but all colors are caused by the same light, so do many experiences appear in the undivided and the indivisible awareness, each separate in memory, identical in essence. This essence is the root, the foundation, the timeless and spaceless possibility of all experience. Right? So you think about this, your mind, as long as you're identified with it, you're within the mind, and all of its thoughts seem to apply to you, and they seem to indicate your story, and all of your memories seem to indicate you, because you're in the dream, you're in the mind itself, you're identified with it. So everything in there is very personal and points directly at you. But in reality, it's not. It's not. You are all experience simultaneously, the potential of the infinite. You are the dreamer. You are the mind itself. And within the mind, everything is possible. But until you step into it, it doesn't have a particular. It doesn't manifest as such. All right, well, goodness, it's already after 10. So, Jan, have we completely put you on your ear now? I love that's the great thing with Zoom, is sitting and just looking at our faces as we read this stuff. It's like all of these things. But just the experience. I mean, truly, it takes a while to get there, he says, but we just keep doing it over and over until we can. Try and experience a moment of absolute silence in your mind. Just try to just, Om is a good one to do it. Just do a long, drawn out Om that doesn't really end. Just Om. And just be that sound and put all of your attention on that sound, and don't let anything else arise. And see, even if you get a split second of it in there, you will find such a beautifully existent bliss that will just, it's the wound that Saint Teresa talks about, or Saint John of the Cross. It's the kiss of the beloved of the divine. It's mother will touch you in that moment. If you can cease the noise for a split second, you'll touch a live wire within yourself that carries a current of pure love. And you'll touch it, and you won't know what you touched because it won't come in through the front door. It'll come in through your isness. It won't come in through as a sensual experience. It'll come in through an isness. But Mother says that when that happens, your first thought, like, what was that? And then our problem is that we go back and try and find it. And so we employ our senses and mind to find, because we put it in front of ourselves and go looking for it. But it only exists when everything else ceases to exist, right? So when the particular you is not consciously present in your mind construct, and for a minute in that silence of mind, the real you, that Ananda, comes through with in such a beautiful clarity. It will leave you hungry for the rest of your life for touching that again, for finding that again. And it's so humorous because it's what you are. You're carrying it with you everywhere you go, and while you're looking for it. Where is that thing? So try that practice, just sit there. Or it's the same practice as sitting and thinking about the divine presence, like Thakur or Jesus or Buddha. They're stand-ins, without diminishing them. They're stand-ins for this silence, for this unchanging absolute. It's the same process. They are that which you seek, but you put them in yourself. You face them in your heart, facing the same way you are, according to those spiritual instructions. And then you come to realize there's no difference, there's no separation, because they represent that detached universal, the whole through which God can be seen, as it were. They are representative of a nothingness, an absence of personality that allows you to see God through them. You see, so we're trying to put that same hole in the mind. We're trying to create a space of nothingness in the mind through which God can be seen, just like Thakur described himself. I am a hole through which God can be seen. So if you can manage unbroken attention on Thakur, on the divine ideal, that's the same as that unbroken solitude of mind, silence of mind. So make that an experiment. See, it's important that these things come out of our head and into our life. It's important that we start paying attention to our internal world so that we don't tuck these thoughts in our mind and think that we know them, but that we become intuitively aware of their reality within us. That's what we want to happen as we read these things. We don't want to become masters of Jnana. We want to become big Jnanis. We want to be the experiencers of Jnana.